Shall we start, sir? Hello. Shall we start, sir? Hello. Uh, Very good afternoon and Namaste Vandanal. Myself Dr. Poonam Vajpayee. And first of all, on behalf of RAV, I would like to extend a warm welcome to our respected dignitaries, respected speaker of today's session, respected gurus, teachers, students, and all the viewers who are watching this session on our Facebook Live page. In this series, we have successfully completed 41 sessions, and today it's our 42nd session. And we are very grateful to our respected speakers from different fields as they pour in ocean of their knowledge, expertise, and experiences with us, and also keeps us updated to maintain pace with the existing scientific world. Now, we are blessed to have esteemed presence of respected Padma Bhushan Vaidyashi Devinder Triguna sir, President of GBRAV, respected Vaidyashi Manoj Nesri sir, Advisor of Ayurveda, Ministry of Ayush, respected Vaidyashi Anupam Srivastava sir, Director of RAV. We are grateful to them for their constant guidance, support, direction, and inspiration for such a great endeavors and gracing the occasion. Today, we are privileged and honored to have with us one such great personality as an eminent speaker, the respected Professor Dr. M. Sridhar Rao sir. He is Principal and Superintendent at Sri Swaminarayan Ayurvedic College, Gandhinagar, Gujarat, and he is going to enlighten us on a topic medico-legal aspects of Ayush hospitals. The operations of private Ayush clinics or hospitals are being governed by different national, state laws and regulations. By different national and state law regulations, sir will be enhancing our knowledge on different laws which are pertaining to the different aspects related to the Ayush hospital. Now, without wasting much time, I would like to invite a respected admin officer of RAV, Shri N. Ramakrishnan sir, to please deliver a welcome address. Over to you, sir. Ramakrishnan sir. Sir, your mic is off.
Good afternoon. Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Yes. Audible, sir.
Good afternoon. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I welcome everyone on behalf of Rashtriya Ayurveda Vidyapeeth for the 42nd webinar series of the Gyan Ganga. Today, before welcoming, I will just give a thing. What is the importance of medico-legal aspects of Ayush hospitals? Because most of our very important thing for our medical officers of Ayush, what is the limitation? To know the limitation, today's program will be a line, will open a, give a light for them. What extent they can do and what extent they can't. Before that, I welcome Padma Bhushan Devendra Trigunaji, Dr. Manoj Nesri, Professor Ayurveda, my director, Dr. Anupam Srivastava, who is not here today, and all the gurus of RAV, students, and most importantly, Dr. M. Sridhar Rao, the main lecturer of the today's program. Today, this is Gyan Ganga. Even today's situation of COVID-19, Gyan Ganga is the only source where we are able to interact with our students and our gurus. We are just lighting the mind. It is not an exactly, this is not a classroom teaching. We are giving an sparks here. These sparks, these students have to carry with themselves. They have to enlighten it with the help of their gurus. And guru should also guide the students where they can do further reading on these aspects so that they can develop themselves as a good medico-legal student as well as good doctors, which is a very important aspect because nowadays there are a lot of cases are arising that Ayush doctors have done this, done that. But today, Speaker Dr. Sridhar Rao will certainly enlighten us with his knowledge that what is the limitations also. So first learn the limitations of our limitations first, then we can talk on our strength. So our strength should also be understood at the same time our limitations also. We should not put ourselves into trouble by doing some bravados. Okay, for all students, please listen. This is a very important topic, especially for all the students, because they have the career in front of them and they have to learn medico-legal aspects, very important. Dr. Sridhar Rao, who is a principal and medical superintendent at Sri Swaminarayan Ayurved Medical College, Gandhinagar, Gujarat, and he is also an NABH assessor also. So we are blessed to have him today in this session of the 42nd webinar. I once again welcome one and all for the 42nd webinar of Gyan Ganga. Thank you. Over to you, Poonam.
Thank you very much, sir, for addressing us with your kind words and blessings and also for a welcome address. Now, without wasting much time, I would like to share a brief introduction of our today's speaker, Professor Dr. M. Sridhar Rao, sir. He has completed his BMS from Government Ayurved College, Bangalore University, and his MD from Government Ayurved College, Nanded. Sir has also did MBA in Hospital Management and MSc in Yoga. He is Doctorate of Yoga. Currently, he is serving as Director of Health Sciences, Principal and Medical Superintendent, Head of Department of Rog Nidan at Gujarat's renowned Sri Swaminarayan Ayurvedic College, Gandhinagar. He is also a Principal Assessor of NABH Ayush, Quality Council of India, and National Auditor for National Quality Assurance Standards for Public Healthcare Organization under Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, and also has assessed various Ayush and modern hospitals across the country with special interest in statutory compliances and laws applicable to Ayush hospitals. He possesses 20 years of experience in Ayush healthcare industry in both public and private sectors, India and abroad. He also served as a WHO-sponsored technical consultant for international cooperation to the Ministry of Ayush, New Delhi, and was responsible for formalizing and implementing new schemes and policies for international cooperation, implementation of National Ayush Health Programs, Regulatory Affair and Export Policy. He was a clinical specialist and project coordinator for the initial establishment of All India Institute of Ayurveda under Ayush at New Delhi. He has a vast teaching and evaluation experience of both UG and PG academics in different Ayurveda colleges across the country, and he is also a member of Board of Studies in different universities. Under international achievements, he has credit of establishing the first Ayush Information Cell with Indian High Commission, Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia in 2010. He has conducted Ayush workshops at South Korea on behalf of Ministry of Ayush. He has traveled extensively to countries like South Africa, Singapore, New Zealand, Malaysia, South Korea, Uganda for promotion of and training programs of Ayurveda and Yoga for last 2 decades. At present, he is also an academic advisor and visiting faculty to Ayurversity, New Zealand, offering various authentic Ayurveda and Yoga courses through online and offline modes. Now it's time to invite our today's guest speaker, Dr. Sridhar Rao, sir, and I request him to please start today's session. And a humble request to all the viewers to kindly please turn off their mic and camera for better clarity and connectivity. Over to you, sir, and welcome you, sir. Dr. Sridhar Rao, sir.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. Hope I'm audible.
Yes, sir.
Can you permit me to share the screen, ma'am?
Yes, sir. Please share.
Is it visible?
Not yet, sir. Yeah. Yes, it's visible now, sir.
Hope it is visible now.
Yes, sir. Please continue, sir.
Okay. Respected Gurujan and dear students, though medical profession is regarded as a very noble profession in modern times, The Indian doctors are at crossroads, facing ethical and legal challenges in the practice of this profession. And we Ayush doctors are not an exception for this. As I'd like to begin with a quote, ignorantia legis nemine excusat. Ignorance of the law excuses not. Since ignorance of the law is not an excuse, knowledge of the law is a constitutional necessity today. This is most of the times due to the ignorance or lack of awareness. It is in the best interest of Ayush doctors to familiarize themselves with the basics of legal and statutory aspects of Ayush medical profession that this particular topic has been chosen for today's webinar. Dear Vaidyas and administrators, let me tell you, there are more than 30 statutory norms applicable to an Ayush healthcare facility, and also it has some regional norms based on where the location of your facility is. So some of them gives you flexibility to apply even during the course of your practice, but some are mandatory, without which you will not be allowed to venture into this noble profession. Delay is sometimes going to be forcing you to pay a fine, and sometimes you may have to face legal consequences. So it is hence very crucial, friends, to understand all the regulatory norms which are needed to establish a Ayush facility and to abide by it to avoid legal implications. So the best way to handle medical legal issues is by adhering to the prescribed laws and provisions. So this session provides the measures that all Ayush doctors and hospitals can execute to prevent legal issues. So just to be clear on my part, my topic today does not deal with MLCs, the medical legal cases, which is totally an exhaustive area and it needs a separate session altogether. So our interest and focus today is to deal with that which are not MLCs, but laws, regulations, statutory compliances, which are required for Ayush hospitals. And this particular subject, unfortunately, is not dealt in our undergraduate or postgraduate curriculum for its practical applicability. Presently, the operation of a private Ayush clinic or a hospital are being governed by different national, state laws and regulations. To sum up, there are laws which are governing the commissioning of a hospital. There are laws which are governing the qualifications, practice, and conduct of Ayush professionals. There are laws which are governing the manufacture, storage, sale of Ayurveda, Unani, Siddha, and homeopathy drugs and their safe medication. There are laws which are governing the management of the patient. There are laws governing environmental protection. There are laws which are governing the employment of manpower in Ayush hospitals. There are also laws governing the business aspects of the Ayush hospitals. So to go into the details of each one of them, to begin with, it is the laws which are governing the commissioning of the Ayush hospital, which means the establishment of a Ayush hospital. Now, these laws make sure that the hospital facilities are created after a due process of registration and are going to be safe for the public. So under this, the registration of a society is being managed by a society under the Society Registration Act 1960 has to be carried out. It may also be a proprietorship. It can be a partnership, can be a limited liability partnership, or it may be a company. It has to be registered with the Ministry of Corporate Affairs under the Companies Act 1956. which has been repealed in 2019 with some amendments. So if the accountability of a hospital has to be there, it has to have a proper legal identity or a legal status, and that comes with the registration of that particular entity. Next is the National Building Code 2005. Now, this particular code gives guidelines for construction, for maintenance, and fire safety of structures. And it also includes the hospitals. And Ayush hospitals are not an exception. So this code is being established by the Bureau of Indian Standards, and it is recommendatory for so all the healthcare facilities that are
Sir,
designed. Pardon?
sir, please speak loudly.
I think I'm at the peak of my voice.
Yes, sir, your voice is very low.
Is it any better now?
No, sir.
Hello, is it any better now? What's
No,
the
sir,
maximum?
you are very low voice.
Sir, you're audible, but I think some very few voices coming. There might be some network issue. Otherwise, you're audible.
Yeah, there may be network issues on the other side as well.
Yes, that could be so. Please continue, sir.
Okay. So under this National Building Code, the guidelines are given for how to build the structure, what should be the measurement of the corridors, size of the rooms, what material should be used for the flooring, what should be the width of the staircase, what should be the width of the passages, what material should be used for the staircases, how many lifts have to be there, what should be the passage for evacuation, where should be the assembly be for the evacuation. All those guidelines have been given in the National Building Code, which is very essential mainly for preventing any hazard, particularly the fire prevention. So coming next to the Urban Land Act, which is not applicable in many of the states, but still it is important because it takes care of bringing about an equitable distribution of land in urban areas to subserve the common good. Means it doesn't allow any single person or a company to grab maximum area of land for their vested interests. So this particular act takes care of that, that is equitably distributed to different activities required for the society. Then comes the Fire Safety Rules, 1987. Every hospital would require a no objection certificate from the Fire Safety Department. This particular act is to make more effective provision for the fire prevention and fire safety measures in buildings, including hospitals and nursing homes. Then comes the Electricity Rules, 1956. So all electrical supply lines and apparatus, whatever equipment is used in the hospital, they should be of sufficient power and sufficient size, and their mechanical strength should be as per the required norms, and it should be as per the standards of ISI, so as to prevent any danger. That particular certification has to be taken from the electricity department for starting to use any of those heavy electrical equipment. Next comes the license for diesel storage. If the hospital stores large quantity of petroleum products like diesel, for using it in diesel generator, permit must be obtained from the controller of explosives under the Petroleum Act 1934. The permit is usually required if the storage is in excess of 30 liters. Apart from that, if the hospital is using cylinders, compressed gas, or LPG for its kitchen or for Panchakarma, it should take a permit from Controller of Explosives under the same Act, Petroleum Act 1934. Coming to the registration of boilers, there needs to be a certificate obtained under the Indian Boilers Act 1923 if the hospital uses large boilers, then it has to get the certificate under the Boilers Act from boiler inspectors. So this certificate is generally issued for a period of 3 years, and it has to be renewed after that. Then there has to be license for operating lifts. If the hospital building has lifts installed in it, a certificate must be obtained for operating the same. The certificate is issued after inspection by the lift safety inspectors who assess the requirements stated under the Lifts and Escalator Act. In continuation to that, if the hospital has an X-ray unit, then there has to be a protection certificate from the AERB. It has to be obtained while you commission the X-ray equipment in the hospital. Next is a very important act called as the Clinical Establishment Act 2010. There is a link also given below, and that can be shared even after this session. Now, this particular act, which has been passed by the Parliament of India, has been established to regulate all the clinical establishments in India. And there is no exception for Ayush hospitals. The act requires all clinical establishments to register themselves and provide a set of standards and guidelines for common diseases and conditions. Now, many states have adopted the law by passing their resolution in their respective legislative assemblies. Till recent times, we have seen states like Himachal Pradesh, Mizoram, Sikkim, Bihar, Rajasthan, Uttar Pradesh, Uttarakhand, Jharkhand, Assam, Haryana, and Karnataka have adopted this particular act, wherein there is a requirement of getting registration of their clinic, nursing home, or hospital, and it is mandatory. Even if a person intends to practice from home, a registration of the establishment has to be made according to the law. Then there is a Registration Act 1908. This act is to consolidate the enactments relating to the registration of documents. So any document which is going to have a legal implication should be registered under this act. Then there are hospitals which run canteens and provide food facility to the patients or the visitors. So for this, there has to be a license obtained from Food Standards and Safety Authority of India, FSSAI. This happens to be the supreme authority which is responsible for regulating and supervising food safety. So that is about establishing laws for a hospital, Ayush. Moving on to the laws that govern qualifications, practice, and conduct of Ayush professionals. Most of you are aware that there is the IMCC Act 1970, under which there is Chapter 4 giving the details of central register. Then there is the Practitioners of Indian Medicine, Regulations 1982, which gives in detail standards of professional conduct, etiquette, and code of ethics. This is also very well accessible on the official website of the council. A link has also been provided that can be shared even after the session. Besides these, there is a mandatory registration of Ayush medical practitioners with their respective state Ayush council or board. Now, if at all Ayush hospital has additional medical manpower or nursing manpower or physiotherapy professionals appointed in their hospital, they also will be governed by the other acts like the Indian Medical Act, Indian Medical Degrees Act, Nursing Council Act, physiotherapy rules under the AICTE. And if the hospital is established a rehabilitation facility and there are professionals working under this, then they also will be governed by the Rehabilitation Council of India Act 1992. Not to go much into the details because they are very well clearly explained in the council's site. The practitioners of Indian medicine, their character, the duties, the responsibilities, their patient's delicacy and secrecy, the details of prognosis, where the patient must not be neglected, upholding of honor of the profession, engagement of an obstetric case. The practitioner should serve first as a citizen, then he is responsible for the public health, including the situation what we are facing today. So all these things have been given much in detail, what can be done and what should not be done. Then very important is seen in the part 4, which is the code of ethics, where the nomenclature and qualification have to be clearly mentioned by the practitioner or the group of practitioners of the hospital. The most important thing is whenever there is a change of address, the announcement regarding that has to be formally made to the press, either in a single or multiple papers. And the important points should be whenever there is starting of a practice, whenever there is change of type of practice, whenever there is change of address, whenever there is temporary absence from duty, and after resuming the practice, and if they are succeeding to another practice. So these are the occasions where there should be formal announcement in the press. Let us move on. The laws that govern the storage, sale of drugs and safe medications, which come under the purview of the Ayush hospitals. The Drugs and Cosmetic Act 1940, which itself is a big area, which deals completely with the manufacture, norms of their storage, the norms of their sale. And there are particular sections in this act, particular chapters in this act, which deals with the ASU and homeopathy medication. We'll not be going much into the details because it's a different big area, which is more inclined to the pharmaceutical area. The Drugs Control Act 1950, which regulates the cost of the drugs. So that is also an important act that does not give the freedom to the manufacturer or for the seller fix a cost or the price at their whims and fancies. They can very well regulate the price for any medicine that is manufactured and comes out in the market. Then the hospital should be very careful for storing or dispensing spirits. So our Asavas are not an exemption for that. There is the Central Excise Act 1944, which always gives clear indication about what can be stored, where it can be stored, and how much can be stored. So there are different guidelines for individual practitioners for hospitals about the permitted limit of spirit that they can have. In addition to that, the Narcotic Drugs and Psychotropic Substance, NDPS Act 1985, it has very important law of controlling the psychotropic substances, narcotic drugs. And we, in our systems, also have some drugs which fall into this category, particularly the opium preparations, the cannabis sativum preparations, Hyphena and Tibang. So these are banned till the recent times, and only recently the permission has been given for medicinal use, but under complete record and monitoring the Act. So then there is a retail drug license has to be taken. It again important note that this may not be mandatory in all the states, but there are states where there is a retail drug license required for storing and selling the drugs in the retail market. Then there is a Sale of Goods Act in 30, which is an agreement between the buyer and the seller. So it also is holding for our medicines. Then comes the adulteration of drugs, which is an offense under the IPC 274. Will also be covered under that. Then there are legal provisions or regulations of Ayurveda, Siddha, Unani, and homeopathy drugs. So these are the particular chapters and particular sections dealing with their manufacture, their labeling standards, their presentation standards, the information required for dispensing, batch, place of manufacture, consumer, where they can reach and get the details of the medicines. So all these things are covered under these Act and these rules. In addition to that, a very important Act, which is called as the Drugs and Magic Remedies Act 1954, which deals about the objectionable advertisements. Most of the practitioners are not aware of this Act. We see different advertisements claiming 100.
Sir, please unmute your mic. You are not audible. Hello. 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 Everybody, please stay connected. Hello. Excuse me, sir. Please unmute your mic. You are not audible. Hello. Everybody, please stay connected.
Are we back in track?
Yes. Yes, sir.
I'm not sure how many slides we have missed.
Code of
Okay.
ethics. Yes, sir.
Okay. So I was talking about the Drugs and Magic Remedies Act 1954. Different types of objectionable advertisements is covered under this, and there are legal implications if out of ignorance we advise that we are going to do your 100% treatment, results are guaranteed, and different types of pictures to indicate that there is going to be a claim for difficult or impossible diseases. So all that is covered under that particular act. Other related acts applicable to our products, the Food Safety Act, Biodiversity Act, because the ingredients are all procured from the wild, there is the governing of the Wildlife Protection Act as well. Raw material is procured from the forest, so we are covered under the Indian Forest Act. And as already mentioned, Narcotic Drugs and Psychotropic Substances Act, the standards of weights and measurements, because all the ingredients are in a particular measurement. So all these acts are only good for ASU and H medications also. Now moving on to the next aspect of the laws that are governing the management of patients. Those who are involved in obstetrics and gynecology practice, please bear in mind that we are also governed by the MTP Act 1997. Then who are involved in sterilization cases have to follow the rules of insurance cover sterilization cases. Then the hospitals which are having maternity ward dealing with the births and hospitals which come across the deaths, we are covered under the Birth and Death and Marriage Registration Act 1986. Then people or the hospitals dealing with mental disorders or psychological disorders, they are all covered under the Indian Policy Act 1912. Most of you are aware that the Epidemic Disease Act of 1987 is also being implemented full swing now, and it is also applicable to Ayush hospitals. If we are dealing with the lepers, then we come to the Lepers Act, then the Guardians and Wards Act of 1890, and then the Mental Health Act of 1987. These are the additional laws and regulations which are governing the management of patients. In addition to that, law of privileged communications, the Indian Evidence Act, which deals about the disclosure of privileged, confidential, patient-related information before the court of law. So, under this act, to be very careful where to disclose and where to not, can be disclosed only before the court of law on the demand that is made from the court. Then we are also governed with the law of frauds. If there is issue of being mentally hurt or being pressure, or if you are put into a situation where they are not really interested, but you're forcing them to do something, then all come under the law of frauds. Then the Consumer Protection Act and Protection of Human Rights Act. So we are governed by also acts. Then the laws that are governing the environmental protection. Under this, a very important Biomedical Waste Management Handling Rules 1998, which is amended again. The clinics or nursing homes or hospitals which are involved in generating medical waste, in segregation, in transportation, and in disposal of the waste. They are supposed to take a certificate of authorization and should be reporting periodically about the amount of waste that has been generated, that has been transported for disposal. So these licenses are very much required if it is a single clinic, and if it is running a day therapy center, or if it has beds and Panchakarma facility. Besides these, which are protecting the environment, will be the Water Act 1974 to prevent the water pollution, and the noise pollution, the rules of 2006, then the rules regarding the safe discharge of effluents in public sewers and drains. So this also is very important who are involved in the manufacture of their own medication. If all there are any effluents, not to discharged into the public sewers and drains. Then there are air prevention and control of pollution rules in 1982. Then the Environment Protection Act 1986 and the Prohibition of Smoking in Public Places rules 2008. So all these are related to the protection of the environment, and any hospital or nursing home of Ayush have to be abiding by these provisions of the law. Going to the next segment, that is the laws that are governing the employment of manpower in the Ayush hospital. So we are governed by the Child Labor Act, where there is a specific age limit where the children should not be employed, what age they can be employed, and what sort of work they can be doing. All this has to be carefully dealt before employing any person. Then the Citizenship Act of 1955 is also very important while employing manpower, whether it is directly or through an agency. We are going to be responsible even if it comes through an outsourced agency. Then the Employees Provident Fund and Miscellaneous Provision Act 1952. So this becomes mandatory for establishments which has a minimum number of employees, which may be 10 and more than that. And all this has to be done systematically. The documents, the registers, the challans have to be maintained properly. This has got a big legal implication. Then the Equal Remuneration Act 1976. This act is about providing equal remuneration to both the genders, the male and female, for the same type of work and the same number of hours of work. So there cannot be any discrimination, and it comes to the notice of the authorities that we are going to be in trouble. So this act is very important, not to discriminate the gender base. Then the Minimum Wages Act of 1948 also has to be borne in mind. So we cannot fix the pays and wages as per our whims and fancies. It has to be according to the prevailing act. May be different now for different states. We have to check with the local authorities and fix the minimum wages according to that. Then the Payment of Bonus Act 1965, which is about 8.33% for people who are having minimum wages, and if they are working for minimum number of years in the establishment. So this is commonly in the companies, in the factories, but it has also been extended to shops and establishment. So we are also coming under that purview. So this also may have to be maintained. Coming to the Payment of Gratuity Act 1972. So employees who are having minimum salary and who have been working for the organization for more than 5 years, so they'll be covered under the Gratuity Act 1972. So we may have to look into this aspect as well. Then Mandatory Tax Deduction at Source Act is very important because most of the professionals working in nursing homes or Ayush hospitals, they are drawing a payment which comes under the TDS Act. So this has to be properly paid and the records are to be properly maintained. Moving on, there are Maternity Benefit Amendment Act 2017, which currently says it's 26 weeks maternity leave benefit if the person has been working for the last 150 days with any hospital or healthcare facility. And in that, again, a minimum of 6 weeks is mandatory to be given after the delivery. And it again depends on the organization if they can be allowed to work after that. The next act is Workmen's Compensation Act 1923, which again speaks about compensation in different scenarios. Then the Person with Disabilities Act 1955. So what advantages and benefits have to be provided to the person with disabilities, right from the recruitment to their retirement, have to be provided according to this act. Then the provision SC and ST Act 1989 is very much active, and most of them ignore this because they're not aware of what the act says about what is the provision under that. So we'll have to look into this particular particular act while employing and maintaining proportion of employees coming under this type of reservation. Apart from this, there is a Weekly Holidays Act 1942. So they can't be working all the days of the month throughout the year. There's a specific act for this, which is this number of days can be working days. There has to be a break, minimum 24 hours after 7 days of work, and it gives the number of hours of work also. And this is being governed by the Ministry of Labor. Sometimes out of ignorance, if there is demand and the work being extracted and something goes wrong, it is going to be a big trouble. See, most of these act laws, unless there is a problem, most of them are ignored. Whenever there is conflict, whenever there is issue, only then these are going to be highlighted and they're going to be put on record and have to face the music. The next important aspect, the commercial part, there are regulations governing the business aspects of the Ayush hospital. The hospitals which are run by charitable trusts, religious organizations, are accountable. There has to be a legal for that, and they are supposed to follow certain regulations. So all that is going to be according to the Charitable and Religious Act 1920. Then the Contract Act also plays an important role. The Customs Act, then the rules for the display of Red Cross insignia. See, most of the hospitals, out of ignorance, they put the Red Cross as a signage in front of the hospital, but there is a regulation because that has been patented by the Indian Red Cross Society. No one else is supposed to display such signages, and they can penalize or they can take it to the court. Apart from that, the hospitals having ambulances, their registration has to be an ambulance to the appropriate RTO, and the ambulance requirements, the checklists have to be very well maintained in the records. Also, the hospitals are using telephones and other communication equipment. We are covered under the wireless operation certificate from the Post and Telegraphs Department. And the government has always the authority to check the type of communication, to trace and to question about the type of communication that is being made. So all this is coming under the business aspect of the hospital. The most important Indian penal codes that are applicable for the Ayush practitioners and Ayush hospitals. So most of these would have been covered in your undergraduation, your specific subject of forensic medicine toxicology, Agritantra and Vyavahara Ayurveda. So the section 29 is with the tampering of documents. So it is very important for the hospitals to maintain a proper record and specific place where these records are maintained, and the number of years that they have to be maintained. Section 176, failing to inform the police in essential circumstances. Then section 269, 271 deals with the spread of infectious diseases and knowingly disobeying the quarantine rule. So this is the section that is being applied for the people who are disobeying the quarantine rule. Then section 304A, the act of negligence causing patient's death. Section 312 to 315, causing sex selection, miscarriage, abortion, hiding facts. So these are usually in nursing homes, hospitals having the obstetrics and gynecology facility. Then section 315, the act of preventing the child from being born alive to cause it to die after birth. Then section 319 to 322, causing grievous hurt, loss of vision, loss of hearing, or disfigurement. Then comes to section 336, 38, causing hurt by rash or negligent act. Then the section 340 and 342, the offense of wrong confinement. And this usually happens if the patients are willing to go and they are not allowed to go due to some administrative reasons. Apart from that, the Ayush hospitals are expected to submit timely reports and returns to the health authorities. So we will be busy in operating our own hospitals, but things miss out. If they are very important, then we are going to be again in trouble. So the cases of notifiable diseases as applicable states, individual states, like the section 317 of the Delhi Municipal Corporation Act, they have to be reported, they have to be notified to the local authority. Then cases of food poisoning have to be reported to the local municipal health authorities under the Prevention of Food and Nutrition Act 1954. And if there are incidents of needle stick injuries, also have to be brought to the notice of the local authorities. An extension to the Environment Protection Act, every clinic, nursing home, or hospital is expected to submit a report, annual report under the Biomedical Waste Management Rules 1998. It is not sufficient if we just get authorization of BMW. We have to continue submitting the annual reports. Only then is clear to the administration that you are properly managing the rule. Then the reports on the MPPs that are carried out in the clinic. Then the reports of ultrasonography instrument done on the pregnant women. Some of the hospitals may be having the obstetrics and gynecology department, mainly the colleges. So they are supposed to maintain the reports, periodically submit them to different authorities. Apart from that, if there are any ADRs, drug reactions, and they have to be reported concerned pharmacovigilance units. Most of these come under the research. Now coming to the national regulatory body for clinical trials, this particular aspect is being covered because many of the audience are from hospitals and research centers or medical colleges where they are conducting some research clinical trials. So let us understand that there is a Central Drug Standard Control Organization, CDSCO, and the Drugs Control General of India, which is the national regulatory body for all clinical trials in the country. And the registration of ethics committee that approves the studies according to the rule 122D is mandatory. Most of the institutions, out of ignorance, have not registered with the ethics committee, their ethics committees under this particular authority. It becomes important that the invigilators, the investigators, and the administrators of academic institutes ensure that their IEC is registered with the Central Licensing Authority. It's a cumbersome process. However, once you get to the IEC registration, things are going to be very authentic. So the registration has to be renewed every 3 years, and this is mandatory for the regulatory clinical trials. Besides Ministry of Ayush, the Drug Control Cell has developed the good clinical practice guidelines for clinical trials of ASU medicine. So the link is provided, that can be shared again. The entire scale of the rules, the guidelines for the good practice for all the Ayurveda, Siddha, Unani clinical trials have been very well established in this CP guideline. Not to forget the clinical trial registration in India. All the clinical trials conducted in research centers or Ayush colleges have to be registered with the Central Trial Registrar of India, CTRI. is maintained by the ICM. This is mainly for transparency and accountability of the clinical research being conducted. It also has the original validity of such trials to oversee the ethical conduct of clinical trials and reporting the results. It is very important. Then there are Indian acts, orders related to the clinical trials. To name them, Drugs and Cosmetic Act 1940, PCIM Act, the guidelines of exchange of biological material, the Right to Information Act. Let me remind you that even if it is a private institution conducting a research, is very much coming under the RTI Act 2005, because it will be a IEC approved project, and IEC is always in the public domain. Apart from that, the biomedical research on human subjects, regulations, control and safeguards in 2005 is also an act which is for the clinical trials. So with all these laws, ordinances, regulations which are regulating the Ayush hospitals, there are some ethical parameters and code of conduct. If these are carefully met, if they are watched properly, if provisions are adhered to, then there may be minimum legal implications for the hospitals that we run. Mainly the maintenance of patient medical records. All the physicians should maintain medical records of indoor patients for a minimum period of 3 years. And if required by the patient, should be issued on written request within 72 hours. The next important parameter is display of registration numbers. Every prescription of the Ayush physician to display the registration number issued by the State Council to the practitioner. And important thing is to use the generic names drugs instead of using the alphabets or single letters. Physicians should always use generic names in the descriptions. And utmost quality assurance in patient care is very important. There has to be provision of minimal information about procedures, neglecting the sickest and time-consuming patients, and failure to provide necessary information, and scheduling of insufficient time for patient visits. These things should be avoided. Then exposure of unethical conduct, bribery, practices, and other such behavior which potentially spoil the trust and reputation of the doctors, the hospitals, and the practitioners. Also important is the payment of professional services, financial interest, and the fees for the services should be discussed before starting the service. The no gain, no payment ideology should not be followed by any doctor. Also, not to miss the medical errors which are common and that can be avoided. First is the failure to diagnose. The entire should be involved in diagnosing. They have to ensure, avoid mistakes in diagnosis and obtain more accurate and expedient results. Second thing is failure to identify a complication. Any complication and risk pertaining to the treatment should be mentioned on the consent form of the medical procedure, whether it is a short procedure or whether it is a long procedure, panchakarma or any other procedure. Then inadequate follow-up should be avoided. In some cases, when patients do not follow the tests as they receive by the physician, the staff and physicians follow up with the patient and keep a track of the status. It's also an important responsibility of the physician. Patient's time is also very important. They should be treated with respect, with dignity, with empathy, and with warmth. what we can always avoid is prescribing errors. Physicians should be aware of the counter drugs and additional drugs that the patient is taking to avoid drug-to-drug interaction or drug-food interactions. Not to forget the asset protection and indemnity. An asset protection plan, in addition to the professional medical liability insurance, should be developed by a physician to safeguard his establishment and his profession. So with that, the minimum required information about the laws, about the regulations, about the statutory compliances are covered. If there are some aspects missing, definitely those will be related to the location of the state. Most of the generalized ones, most of the which are common for the entire country, have been addressed to. Now, I open the session to the hosts, and I'm open to take questions.
Thank you very much, sir, for sharing great insights and very useful and very important information on medical legal aspects of Ayush hospitals. Now it's time for question and answer session. So if any of you will have any doubts or queries, they can ask. You are most welcome. Any doubts or queries? Anybody want to ask anything relating to the topic? Any questions? I think there are no
Hello.
questions.
No, excuse me.
Yes, please.
Hello. Hello.
Hello. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I am
Please
Dr.
ask.
Krishnaya from Tirupati, RAB Guru. Sir, just a personal question. This is actually the many Ayurvedic physicians are preparing their experienced formula at home. Do they require any official registration, just not for selling, but just to the issue to the patients?
If they are qualified, registered Vaidyas, and if they are making their own medicines, or if they are compounding and dispensing for their own patients, there is no license required for that. If they are selling it to outside the patients in any retail shop, then the laws which are governing the medicines come into the picture.
Okay, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, sir, for the question. Anyone else want to ask anything? Any questions?
Came for a very nice presentation, and most of our doubts have been cleared. Very good presentation, sir. Very happy about it. I'm Dr. Varsha Deshpande from Maharashtra.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
चल रही है इनकी सताजी के पीछे.
Any more question or anyone want to ask or share something related to the topic?
हॉस्पिटल डॉक्टर साहब इमरजेंसी में कुछ एलोपैथिक रखना पड़ती है क्या? हेलो
जी
जी सर पूछिए.
तो ये मैं ये कह रहा था मैडम कि क्या हॉस्पिटल में एलोपैथिक भी अलग से विभाग बनाना पड़ता है एलोपैथिक आयुर्वेद के साथ? इमरजेंसी ड्रग्स या कोई इमरजेंसी के एलोपैथिक औषधियां भी अलग रखना पड़ती है, अलग संकाय बनाना पड़ता है इसका डिपार्टमेंट हॉस्पिटल में? आवाज आ रही?
Hello. Hello.
That was not quite audible.
Yes.
Sir, he's asking if there
Yes.
should be a department in that hospital, in this Ayush hospital, where emergency drugs are ready in case of emergency.
Emergency medicines of ASU for practicing in an ASU hospital. If the emergency medicines are from the allopathic side, then there has to be a qualified registered allopathic person to dispense them, to administer them.
Okay. Okay, that means if you have to keep emergency services, if you are providing emergency services, there should be an allopathic doctor who would dispense them or who would advise them or administer them.
Hello.
Ji, sir.
Hello.
Hello.
Ji, sir, please.
What is L3 license for Aristas and Asavas?
Pardon?
3 license for Aristas and Asavas.
Legislation?
Hello.
Sir is asking. Yeah.
L3 license for Aristas and Asavas. Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Hello.
Hello.
Hello.
I think sir is asking, what are any provision for Asava and Aristas?
Yeah. Anything that depends on the alcohol percentage and the volume of the Asava they are going to stock for their practice or for dispensing. So individual practice have got their limitation, and if it is a hospital with many practitioners, then the limitation is different. But they have to have license from the excise department if they are going to store more than a minimum. And in states like Kerala, it is very strict, and they have strict rules being implemented for that.
Thank you so much, sir. Any more questions? Yes. Any more questions? Anybody want to ask any question?
Yeah, Dr. Poonam, if there is a provision to share my email to the audience, you can share. They
Yes,
can
yes,
always they can always reach on email.
Yes, sir.
If they
Definitely,
get-
we can share. Definitely.
Due to the poor audio quality.
Yeah, I'm going to share it.
Thank you.
Any more questions from the participants? I think that's it for today's session. Thank you so much, sir. Indeed, this session was definitely cleared all our doubts and enhanced our knowledge relating to the medico-legal aspects related to the Ayush hospitals. Thank you, sir, for sharing your valuable knowledge and experience with us. Now it's time to conclude our today's session. To extend a formal vote of thanks, I would like to invite Dr. Paritosh Jha. Over to you, Dr. Paritosh.
Thank you, ma'am. It's my privilege to have been asked to propose a vote of thanks on 42nd webinar Gyan Ganga Knowledge of Why, a webinar series organized by RAV. A big thanks to Professor M. Sridhar Rao sir for sharing his experience, views and knowledge regarding medico-legal aspects of Ayush Hospital. Thank you, sir, for enriching our knowledge by your detailed discussion. I would like to thank respected Padma Bhushan Vaidya, Shri Devendra Trigunaji, President Governing Body RAV, for his blessings and continuous encouragement. I am also thankful to Dr. Manoj Nesri sir, Advisor Ayurveda, Ministry of Ayush, able guide to always encourage us to achieve the best. I would like to take this opportunity to my heartiest regard to Dr. Anupam Srivastava sir, Director RAV, for his continuous support, guidance and enormous cooperation throughout the webinar. I would like to thank N. Ramakrishnan sir, Administrative Officer RAV, for his continuous support. At last but not the least, I would like to thank and congratulate Team RAV for their tremendous effort to put forward this webinar series a great success. I'm also thankful to all the participants, gurus, sishyas who are connecting with us continuously throughout the series. Topic and speaker for the next webinar will be shared with you soon. Thank you and have a nice day. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you everyone for being so patient. We will meet in next Thursday at same time. The meeting has ended now. Participants can leave the meeting.
श्री साहब नमस्कार।